Hello again, everyone. This is Joe Dunn, along with my co-host Ryan Beltz. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the SumStar Sports Podcast, right from the hotbed of high school sports, Northeast Ohio, with a special focus on what's happening in Summit and Stark counties. And of course, we welcome back for another season of talking high school, college, and NBA basketball. Hall of Fame coach Randy Montgomery. We're going to talk Ohio State basketball, Mid-American Conference basketball, a little high school basketball this afternoon. However, before we get started, we want to remind you that the SumStar Sports Podcast is being brought to you by John Shaw and everybody at Red Carpet Car Wash, 4546 West Tusk, and all the Dad's Car Wash locations throughout Stark County. And, of course, our good friend Bud Wentz and everybody at the Wentz Financial Group, 5790 Hudson Drive in Hudson, the basketball home of Mid-American Conference. Let's start an open question to both Coach Montgomery and Ryan Beltz. I was taking a look at last night's Illinois-Ohio State basketball game, and I noticed that there was 18,809 seats in Value City Arena, and less than half of them were filled. Less than 10,000 people for the Ohio State-Illinois game. Illinois came in, I think, number 13 in the country. Ohio State at the time was 7-1. Illinois won that basketball game 88-80. Coach, I'll start with you. Then we'll go to Ryan. Is interest in Ohio basketball, is it down right now? It's surprising that a game of that magnitude would only get less than 10,000 people down at Ohio State. What do you think?
Yeah, I watched that game too, Joe, and I think it's a combination of things. There's some apathy right now there. And that game in particular was a microcosm, I think, of what it's looked like the last year for the most part. And, even the last 2 or 3 years where they have enough talent to kind of hang around. And, you got a guy that can get 30 plus points for you. That's an outstanding guard, but you don't have much depth and you don't have much size. And, you end up with a loss again. And, I think you got to win. It's just the nature of what sports is today. If you win, the Cleveland Browns will pack that stadium if they win. If they don't win, it's going to be what it is. And I think that's trickled down to the Ohio State program right now.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed their leading scorer last night played high school basketball, I think, in Georgia, and their starting center is from Germany. So I think that plays a little bit of part of it. If you get Ohio kids and they're used to watching them play, that would certainly help, wouldn't it, Coach?
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. And that was Bobby Knight's philosophy when he coached, is he recruited 3 states, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, I believe. And those were it pretty much. And, he hit those hard, and big reason for that was that, he wanted that fan base, which is rabid, to be happy. And usually there's plenty of talent. And the best player, one of the best players in Michigan State right now is from Ohio. 6'10" kid from Cleveland Lincoln West or Lutheran East, I believe. But, they're there. You just have to get them, and they shouldn't be leaving Ohio.
Exactly. Ryan, let's bring you into the conversation since you're an Ohio State alum. Are Ohio State fans still crying in their beer after that loss to Indiana in the football game? They can't come out and support a basketball team as Ohio State became a basketball school and forget about the basketball. What do you think?
Well, a couple of things. Every November, December, it's going to take a while. Remember, this is a football state. Ohio State, arguably, I think you can make the case, maybe the most impactful football program in the country in terms of what they do, the consistency over 20 plus years. So this is a football state. There is probably a little bit of a hangover. It's in Indiana, although I've heard, and I know we're going to get into this, and I've heard some mixed bags on that game and what it can mean heading into the playoffs. But again, Joe, basketball is not going to capture the imagination at Ohio State, especially when you have a team that could go back-to-back national championships in November, December, unless you have an absolute superstar player and you're ranked number 1 in the country. That's just the reality. Having said that, too, you have to factor in this is an Ohio State basketball program hasn't been to the Final Four since 2007. So, I mean, this is a program that's had some solid years, but nothing spectacular to build up that culture that you would want to have. Now, I think that's a goal of Ohio State long term to get there. Now, last night there were a couple things that I observed. I think Ohio State played Illinois, who I think is one of the better teams in the Big Ten, really well. I think they won the second half battle. Illinois shot 40% from three. It's really going to hard to beat a team like that. And I agree with what you said, Joe. Keaton Wagler is an absolute stud for Illinois. He's a special player. And for Ohio State, they really need someone outside of Thornton to step up. Thornton had 24 points, 9 to 10 shooting in that game. But you're going to need another player to really step up. And Ohio State's got to develop that player throughout the season. But having said that, I wasn't too discouraged by that game. Again, Illinois, I think, is one of the better teams in the country. And Ohio State played them relatively tough. And that's something that they're going to have to really focus on, is to get and develop that bench and develop a secondary scoring threat alongside Thornton.
Coach, it's sad for you and me, especially because you and I both grew up in the heyday of Ohio State basketball. Jerry Lucas, John Havlicek, Larry Siegfried, Mel Knoll. I mean, we're going way, way, way back, but it's been tough to see. I'm not going to call it deterioration of Ohio State basketball. At least the Ohio State not in the national focus anymore, like they did when you and I were growing up.
Well, there's no excuse for it. And, as for the football, look at Alabama 2 weeks ago. They played, it was a rabid game atmosphere at home. Michigan last night, rabid. You got to win. And they don't win down there. And we're winners in Ohio, I think. And if you win, that place would have been packed last night just as it would be for the next football game. You just have to win. But these are mediocre games. They didn't play anybody in the preseason. They played a good team last night at home. Supposed to win at home. Brad Underwood said that after the game. You get on the road in the Big Ten, you got to really grind, but you got to win your games at home. And we don't have any depth. I don't think this team. You wait till they play a Michigan or a UCLA, or they play Purdue. You've been to Purdue this year already, Joe. What do you think it's going to be like for them out there?
That's going to be tough because that Mackey Arena is loud. They've got talent. It's hard to win there. I think they've only lost one game there. I don't know how long it's been since they lost a Big Ten game there. That's going to be very tough. And let me throw something else out to you guys about maybe Ohio State not as good as they used to be, but maybe Ohio college basketball a little uptick. And I throw this out just for conversation. If we would have a Ohio college tournament on a neutral court, and we threw in Ohio State, Dayton, Kent, Akron, Xavier, and Toledo on a neutral court. Coach, I'll start with you. What do you think would happen? Then I'll go to you, Ryan. What would that be closer than people think or not?
Oh, I think that'd be interesting, but you get the teams like Ohio State, they're in Big Ten, and they don't want to go, quote, come down and play at a lower level. But that would be an old school thing that would be done, and Cincinnati even would be a good team. And I don't know. I just think you have to win. Dusty May was available 2 years ago, and we passed on him.
Yeah.
He wanted to come back to the Midwest. He wanted to come back to the Big Ten. So he went to Michigan. And well, look what they're doing. It's coaching, and you got to have a guy in there that's going to get the job done. And they played football the day before the game last night. They showed pictures of them playing football in the Schottenstein Center. Just throwing the ball, and I guess he's trying to loosen them up. But can you imagine Bob Huggins or Bob Knight playing football or wiffle ball the night before a game to try to get your guys loose? They got one really good player. He had 34 points, and out of the 80, and they gave up 88 points, which is defense has been terrible this year. They've given up 100, I think, at least once, and I think close twice. So I think they got a lot of work to do, but that's me. I might be wrong, but I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm in favor of let's get a guy in there that's not happy after tonight. He ought to go in there today and not be happy, not trying to be everybody's buddy and not make anybody mad. I wouldn't be happy if I was him right now.
Ryan, what about that scenario I painted with a Ohio college tournament? I don't think Ohio State would go for it, but all those teams I mentioned, how interested would you be in a tournament like that?
I would love to see it. And, you know, the nature of college basketball, that's why we have March Madness. There's upsets. I don't think the levels of disparity are that wide between some of the blue bloods and some of the other teams. That's why we see the upsets. But, you know, there's really no benefit. It's like LeBron James entering the dunk contest. There's no benefit for Ohio State. If they win it all, it's like, of course you should win this year, Ohio State. If they lose it all, then people get after them. So there's really no benefit for Ohio State. Of course, there'd be a benefit for teams like Akron and Kent. I'm sure they would love to participate in that, but no benefit really for Ohio State. But I would agree with you, Joe. I think Akron could definitely win a tournament like that. Dayton could, Kent could. Ohio State's not infallible. They do have probably the best player in that tournament in Thornton, who's a legitimate stud. But that could be argued as well. But I think it would be I would love to see it. I think it'd be a very close matchup. But let's be honest, there's no benefit for Ohio State to do something like that.
Exactly. Hey, guys, I think I want to throw this out, too, because just a few days ago, I was down in New Orleans, Louisiana, as the Akron Zips took on the Green Wave of Tulane. And Tulane, of course, the night before was playing in their conference championship in football against North Texas State. And the next day, the Akron Zips came to town. And the arena they play in, Coach, you would love. It's like a mini Canton Fieldhouse. It was built in the 1930s. The only thing they didn't have was the peach baskets. I mean, it was, I'll have to send you a picture of that because I fell in love with that place. It only seats maybe 4,000, a little over 4,000. And I knew Akron was going to have problems in there because, as you well know, you get into a place like that, the home court, always home team has the advantage. And the Zips played well and won that game. But to me, they had maybe 1,100 people there, maybe. And Tulane in the past has had some pretty good basketball. And that just surprised me. But I thought I'd throw that out. One of the old-time venues. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that, Coach, or not. Or you're familiar with Tulane basketball.
I had not seen it, but that's neat. And, you know, you just hope that you can create an atmosphere there that is fun. And there wasn't any atmosphere built at Ohio State, and it's a little better now. They've lowered the students down in there and kind of petitioned it off a little bit. But if you really want to get excitement going, you got to win.
Yeah,
it's a WIN, and Akron's winning right now. I think you're going to find that they're going to get a bigger and bigger following as years go on, if they can maintain this level that they're at.
Coach, Illinois wins that game 88-80. The Buckeyes had made a run at them late in the game. If you would have had 18,000 people in it instead of less than 10, they may have won that game with the crowd behind them.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And it's the first game of the year. Ohio State, I think, was up, and everybody's excited. And it's our first Big Ten home game, and that's about as good as they can play. They don't have much depth. So that's just my thought. I mean, I understand. I'm a Buckeye fan, more so in basketball because I get what's going on. But I would love to see them, you know, I just watch things that they're doing, and it's not – I don't think that it's sound fundamental to put yourself on a level that you need to be on.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
I'll throw this question out too. I'll start with you, Coach, and Ryan can comment. You go right south of the Ohio River. You got another basketball power, Kentucky Wildcats. What is going on down there? The fans have turned on Coach Pope. They're not the same basketball team. Big Blue. They're not Big Blue anymore, Coach. What's happening down there?
Well, there's a coaching change. You know, they wanted Calipari out of there so bad, and you know, now they probably would vote to have him come back. But
sure,
you know from watching Coach Huggs through the years, you know, wherever he went, they won. Even Cincinnati was a doormat. on probation when he left Akron to go there. And because of him, he turned him into a national power. And
yeah,
those guys are getting good money. They're getting paid good money, and they need to do that. They need to come up with that. You can't feel sorry for them when they get fired because look at the money they're getting for getting fired.
Exactly. Ryan, what do you think? What's happening to Big Blue down in Kentucky? Or have you noticed that they're losing basketball games? And it doesn't take long for a fan base like Kentucky to turn on somebody after they've had success all these years.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to know that. You've seen the Kentucky just really take a nosedive this year, and things can happen fast in the college basketball world. Once blue bloods and powerhouse, if you don't maintain that in the era of NIL, it can go downhill quick. We saw that, UCLA used to be a powerhouse many years ago. We've seen the changing of the guard. Now you have the SEC schools. You got Baylor, who's now, kind of a powerhouse and has established themselves. Alabama with Coach Oates. So it can easily transition. Now, Kentucky has all the resources. So I don't think Mark Pope is going to have a long leash there. They're going to expect things to be turned around there. So definitely we'll see how long he can maintain this and how long Kentucky fans are going to abide by this. Having said that, Joe, I want to get back to Akron. What a great win against Tulane. I mean, even on the road, I was reading some of the articles of what Tulane boosters and fans said, and they were really impressed with the Zips and said this is a team you can tell has been in the NCAA tournament. And Tulane had some expectations themselves this year, being 6-3, and they feel like Akron really proved that they're have a longer road ahead than they thought. So I think that's a good win for Coach Gross going in on the road to a team like Tulane that's no slouch and winning 88-71. So I was very impressed with that win.
Yeah, they really played well, especially in the second half. But this week it gets tougher because the Zips will be out in Las Vegas, Nevada. They'll be taking on the Murray State Racers. That's game one of a 4-game schedule out there in Las Vegas. I think the second game is I think it's UNLV and Arizona State. They got 2 games after that. And we'll be out there to cover that game. That'll be on 640 WHLO on Saturday afternoon. But, Coach, you remember those old OVC days, Ohio Valley Conference, and Akron and Murray State were in there. That was great basketball back when Hugs was there.
Well, I don't think the jar was ever more filled than the night they played the Mouse McFadden and, the Cleveland State Vikings that night. I'm sure you remember it. And they were hanging from the rafters, literally. People will come when you win, and you're expected to win at that level. So I think that's the key. You look at the common denominators and the quote programs that are rising and falling, and it's the coach in football and basketball. Look at Indiana. I was a doormat 2 years ago. I went to the Ohio State Indiana game 2 years ago, and there were half-filled stands. Now they're the national number 1 team. And what changed? The coach. And I think you can point to that as your leader. And it's going to be interesting to see how Matt Campbell does, at Penn State. He's a good guy, good person.
Oh, yeah.
Good coach. So we're excited to watch him from Stark County.
Yeah, let me make a couple comments on what you said, Coach. Now let Ryan answer. Yeah, it was 3 years ago that the Akron Zips went into Bloomington, Indiana to take on the Indiana Hoosiers in a football game. And Akron drove down in the final seconds, set up for a game-winning 25-yard field goal that would have beat Indiana. And it went wide left, and then they lost in overtime. That shows you how far Indiana's come. The Zips could have hit that field goal. They win that game. I mean, that's amazing. You pointed it out. Indiana football's come all the way back from a potential loss to Akron to number 1 in the nation. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yep. And the only common denominator there is there's a different coach.
Yeah.
The
the other thing I wanted to bring up, Coach, was that Cleveland State Akron game years ago when Hugs was there, and both those teams were coming off NCAA appearances the year before. Cleveland State had Mouse McFadden. They brought a couple busloads of fans down from Cleveland thinking they were going to make a difference in that game. There was unofficially, they wouldn't announce this, but I know the official attendance for that game was over 8,000 in that facility. They locked the doors. They would not let anybody in. In fact, Mark Dowdell, who was the starting center for the Zips, they locked his mother out. They had to get one of the assistant coaches. I'm not sure if it was Ray Herman, who it was. They went racing out to the lobby and say, hey, that's Mark Dowdell's mother. You got to let her into the game. So finally they let her in, but there was people going crazy in there. And of course, people say, how can you get 8,000 people in there? Well, we did. The one thing I tell them, the upper level on the west side are now chairbacks, but that game, there's all bleachers. You could pour them in there. And there was no aisles left upstairs. You could not see aisles anywhere. People standing everywhere, downstairs, upstairs. To me, that is the greatest basketball home attendance and the greatest environment in Akron Zips basketball history. I'm not sure if you were there, Coach, or watched it or what.
Yeah. I was there, and I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. What an atmosphere.
Yeah. Ryan, I'm not sure. You were too young to be at that game, weren't you?
I think I was, but yeah, it's I tell you what, a lot going on. And as Coach mentioned too, I really am curious to see Matt Campbell and what he's going to do. And that's a great example, guys. You know, you look at the job Signetti has done at Indiana. I mean, that could argue to be one of the best coaching turnarounds in modern times. To go into a school like Indiana, he's really taken advantage of the transfer portal. He's taken advantage of NIL. And he's taken a program that historically has not been anywhere close to a football powerhouse. And now they're the number one team in the college football playoffs, chance to win a national championship. That shows you the opportunity that's out there and how one coach can make a huge difference. And that circles back to Coach Diebler and Coach Pope. And when we talk about Diebler, for Ohio State's expectations, I think they gave him the job because he wanted it. He was an Ohio State guy and the team liked him. But if he doesn't get the job done, there's no question in my mind they're going to make a change because they feel like Ohio State, the athletic program, can be just as good in basketball as Michigan and some of the other powerhouses, and that's where they want to be. And same with Coach Pope in Kentucky. He's going to get a short leash because there's a lot of guys hungry for that job that can turn it around. And Signetti's a great example of that. Matt Campbell, I'm very curious to see what he's going to do. You know, the Penn State job, guys, and I'd love to get your perspective on it. That was so interesting to me because I did think it was time for a change, but Coach Franklin did a tremendous job there. And you look, and he took them to the college football playoffs last year. So now what's the expectations for Coach Campbell? Because here's a guy who's coming in following that took him to the college football playoffs last year and got fired. And I think that was a reason why they were having trouble filling that position. So I'm very curious to see, do you think some of these schools, the expectations are not a match of reality of where they think they should be?
I'll let the coach answer that, but the expectations for Penn State is a national championship. That's what they want. They think they're on a par with Ohio State, and that's great high school football in Pennsylvania, and they've been able to get the best players out of there. But, Coach, a lot of expectations at Penn State. I'm not sure if they can live up to them, what that fan base wants.
Well, yeah, I think James Franklin had the whole package except game coaching. And he could recruit. He was good with the alumni. He was, he was a lot of things that Penn State really needed. And he could get you to the brink, but he never won a big game, including, he won a playoff game, but I think they had the easiest road last year. And they got to play at home. And he's not a big game guy. When's the last time they beat Ohio State? When's the last time they beat Michigan? They just didn't. And that's been you got to win those games if you're going to be in that same conversation. That's the plus that Signetti did. He played Michigan, beat Michigan after calling them chumps, and then he played the Buckeyes, and I hate to say it, but they beat us, and they played well. They're a good team. We got to be ready for that team.
Exactly.
We can beat them, but it's a situation where you got that mentality there. And I think if Matt Campbell comes in with the idea, we're going to win. We're going to win here. National championships, not go 9-1, not go 10-1. We're going to win it all. And if you're in our way, we're going to take you out. That's the mentality you have to have. If you don't have that, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
Well, Matt Campbell is known as not only a great game coach, he's also a great recruiter. And with his roots in Stark County in Ohio, you can bet they're going to go head-to-head with Ohio State for the best football players in Ohio. And it'll be interesting to see how they do. But that's a subject for another time. Let's turn our attention in the final 15 minutes here to high school basketball. And Coach, Hoover got a big win over Toledo Whitmer, a convincing win. Louisville, I thought they'd be down this year, but they knock off Perry, I think 52-47. Green beat Talmadge. Now you got another big slate of games coming up this weekend. Any thoughts on high school basketball and the top teams that have changed since the last time we talked?
Well, Alliance, I think beat handily last night, beat Louisville by, I think, 20 points. So that was an interesting game to see. They look like they're going to be a really good team. McKinley was beaten at Hoban, which is a very tough place to play, and they're usually a good team, but I didn't expect a 10-point loss up there. So, things are starting to shake out a little bit with just how good or will they improve? That's the thing you got to see as time goes on. Will your team improve? Lake's off to a 3-0 start, which I'm sure, Tom, softened the schedule a little, but they're playing pretty well, and they won a game at Dover last night, and that was a big win for them. So we're gonna, things are gonna start shaking up here. Hoover plays at Jackson Friday night, which should be a Hoover win, but we'll see how that goes. You hope it's a good ball game, I'm sure, and they've got the veteran team, but Jackson at home is tough, as you well know, Ryan and Joe. That should be a great game.
Yeah, that's the big time sports TV game of the week. I think Dave Sheets will be over there. I was scheduled to do that game. Of course, I'll be out of town, but that should be a great game. McKinley, I think, is at Lake on Friday night. That'll be a tough test for the Blue Streaks. But you're right. I think Alliance, that win over Louisville, they're going to be tough to beat. We had Perry on our weekly TV show this week. They'll be on the TV show, I think, tomorrow night and Saturday morning, but they felt like they played well against Louisville in that opening game, and he thinks they're going to be okay. But we still talked about that great run they had last year, and he says that's starting to pay off. There's a renewed interest in all those young kids over in Perry, those grade school kids. After that big run last year, they all want to be basketball players now. And you've seen that happen before, Coach, in the community. You win like they did last year, and all of a sudden everybody wants to be basketball players.
Well, that's what happens. And, I think it's happening with the Zips. The Zips have been in the NCAA tournament now. That's no longer like this big dream. I think the Akron Zips basketball team expects that they should have a great shot to be back in there this year. And as Bud Wynn said, we want to be in the Sweet 16. And that's the next step. It's a process. There's no question about that. I know when, I came to Hoover, it was like, well, you have a lot of wins, but getting through the tournament is a whole different animal. And winning those games takes a little bit of time and process. And I think the Zips are well on their way in something like that.
Yeah. Ryan, what about your thoughts on high school basketball up in the Cleveland area? Coach and I kind of cover things down here in Stark County and Summit County, but there's great basketball up there in the Cleveland area.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to a Mayfield basketball coach this morning about that. And, I think you're going to have your usual kind of suspects up here. He mentioned Euclid and Lorraine are going to be two teams to watch long term up here. They're going to be really tough. And, of course, Ignatius as well. And then you got Cleveland Heights Lutheran East is always a powerhouse. I think they're going to be really tough. So lots of great talent up here. But an interesting subject to close on. I was talking with him, and he mentioned something really interesting that I've always brought up, and love to get your both perspective on this. And that is, when I was growing up, at least, Michael Jordan was king, and we would lower the hoops to dunk, and we would play a little mid-range game too, just like MJ would do. Well, now these kids have grown up with Steph Curry and those guys, and they, he says when they get into the gym, they start pulling up from half court and start chucking threes up. So he said, he is of the mindset he's trying to get this back in high school basketball. He said they're going to have to push that 3-point line back because these kids are just, they're not understanding the fundamentals. So he's trying to incorporate a more of a mid-range game, a fadeaway shot, some of these things that these kids maybe aren't accustomed to. Coach, I know you've probably talked about this, but get your thoughts on that. It seems like maybe there's going to be a pushback to this 3-point craze we got going on. And he thinks in the next couple of years, he thinks they're going to push this 3-point line back all across all levels, collegiate, high school, and NBA.
Well, your point's good about Steph Curry. He's made that position shot, glamorous. And as a coach, I can tell you, it's not a glamorous statistic. The post game, as we've talked about, has been, minimized. There's very few teams now that have a post game, where they can move the ball inside off an offensive move. And you have to have the size and the skill to do that. But guys that are recruited know that to get to the NBA or the next level, that's not what they're playing in the NBA. So it's trickled down to college. Everything's a pick and roll. You see that. Last night, Ohio State played a little bit of zone. Thought that was a good move. I like to see more teams do more zone, and not stand around zone, but zone where you're guarding people out of a zone set, and looking to make them play a little differently. But it's that's a good question. It's moving in a different direction, but not sure it's always going to be a good direction.
Coach, would you be in favor of moving that 3-point line back now, or leave it where it is?
Well, they moved it back in college. I remember Larry Huggins telling me it was like a little jump shot. He thought it was way too short, and they moved it back another 1.5 feet, I think. And they probably should in high school as well, but kids will just start shooting out there. It's about me and about, what can I get? And I think the team part of it has to, talking about that, that's a criticism that I see with coaches that are always talking about, our program and our culture and our team and all this and that. It's more than a T-shirt. Wisconsin had it all over their T-shirts out there. Luke Fickell wore it in the game. If you need to put it on a T-shirt to make it that way, then I think it's not effective. You have to preach it, teach it, and make your team do that. And that's a tough thing to do today with the way the NIL and the transfer and everything is.
Exactly.
Coach, I was going to jump in real quick and get your both thoughts on this real quick. I heard an interesting thought from someone, to your point about the post-game disappearing. Someone made a recommendation, and it's very interesting to say, why don't they make dunks 3-pointers now to get now obviously this would be more of an effect at the collegiate level where you got tall players, but that would be a way to get that post game to balance out that outside shooting maybe and make a dunk worth 3 points. Any thoughts on that, or is that too much of rocking tradition?
I would not be in favor of that.
Yeah, it's hard. That's an interesting concept. All I know is that when I coached, we had an inside game. Our tight offense was an inside game, and we'd like to score at a 60% clip, and we kept track of that. So, if you're shooting at a 60% clip inside for twos, what do you have to shoot from the 3 to even that out? And it's not as sexy, it's not as fun to watch, but it's successful basketball. So you're right. Something needs to be done, Ryan. And that would certainly give the big guys a chance to maybe score inside, but maybe move the line back and, make it even harder to shoot from out there. What's a good shooting team from the threes? 35% is good.
Yeah.
So Illinois shot 40% yesterday from 3.
Well, they did, but Ohio State's defense is not real good. If you watch some of that, because you're not guarding them. They gave up 100 to that team the second game of the year. They gave up 88 points. If you just said last night Ohio State's going to score 80 points, do you think that you'd have thought they'd have won?
Yeah, no, you're right. Their defense is pathetic, and it needs to get a lot better. And anytime, though, you can shoot 40% on the road, that's still a good three-point shooting team, but the defense definitely needs to step it up.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, one name to remember up there in that Cleveland area, out of St. Ignatius, the Zips got a commitment from a guard from Iggy named R.G. Jones, who's supposed to be really good. So keep your eye on him. He's about 6'4", and played well last year on that Iggy team. He's the guy right now. So keep your eyes on him. And also we want to mention this Saturday over at Massillon, they got 6 games, 12:30. It'll be Chippewa against Woodridge. At 2 o'clock, Lake against New Philly. 3:30, Hoover against Berea Midpark. 5 o'clock, Ashland against Painesville Riverside. 6:30, Glen Oak against Menor. Then at 8 o'clock, Massillon against Walsh Jesuits. So anybody wants to go over and check out those 6 games over at Massillon High School, that's the 7th Annual Hall of Fame Hardwood Classic. So a lot of basketball coming up this weekend. But hey, guys, it's always fun. We got a lot to talk about next week, so enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to everybody again next week on the SumStar Sports Podcast.